Remember when mainstream video games used to be hard? Back then it wasn't a question of when you would be able to beat a game, but if you would be able to beat a game. Nothing was guaranteed. As quick as you got to the end, you could be shot right back to the beginning. There just aren't major games like that anymore. Games where you have to suffer and endure to make progress. Games where you die over and over, and it's only until you learn lessons from past mistakes that you can clear a level. Mainstream games now give so many options to ease up the experience. When you fail, games insist that you lower the difficulty, or offer you a power-up that allows you to breeze through a level, or give you the option to skip an entire level altogether. I want to be clear that I'm not saying these things are bad. Not all gamers possess the same skill sets, and having these extra options widens the accessibility of video games to a greater audience, which is okay. I just feel that there is something to be said about those hard games that made us see who actually became good at playing them. I've been in the mood to play a game that actually challenges me, and it just so happens that there's a pretty huge classic NES title that I'm a little embarrassed to say that I've missed out on. Shh, I've never played Castlevania. Castlevania is a very storied franchise. There have been about a fuck ton of Castlevania games since the original's release in 1986. Now the series seems to have fallen into a bit of a 3D pitfall, but Castlevania is known to have some of the best 2D action platforming of any series out there. There's no real reason as to why I never played it. I just didn't. But I'm ready now, and I thought what better place to start than the original. I'm going in knowing pretty much nothing about the series other than you have a whip and you're supposed to kill Dracula. So let's see how this goes. From the start, it is clear that Castlevania is a very aesthetically pleasing game. Of course, me saying this is like saying that donuts are tasty or having money is nice. People already know. The colors pop and little details give the levels a lot of texture. The game just looks good. Sure, there are things that could have looked better, but as a whole, it has aged fairly well. For the most part, the artistic choices were strong enough that the primitive graphics don't really matter. It manages to have a dark mood while still using a lot of colors. What pulled me even further into the experience was the music. This might be because when I started up the game for the first time, there wasn't any. When it showed Simon Belmont, the game's protagonist, walk up to Dracula's castle, a little fanfare played, but then the level started and there was nothing. This apparently was caused by a glitch that turns off the music if you let the 3 demos play on the intro screen. When you die, the music will start playing like normal, but until then you have to deal with the eerie silence. I don't know why, but seeing what the game was like without its music made me appreciate it that much more when it kicked in. It's pretty typical 8-bit dungeon crawling music, but it's a fucking 8-bit dungeon crawler, so it makes sense. Castlevania's gameplay is really fun. It's platforming, but you can't just jump over enemies like Mario. You actually have to deal with them, and dealing with them can be a bitch, but also rewarding. As everyone probably knows, Castlevania has very restrictive controls. When you jump, you can't change the trajectory of your jump. When you move slowly, and when you attack, you stop moving altogether. These aren't bad things. In fact, they make the action more intense, and you actually have to think about the buttons you press so you don't fuck yourself over. But the restricted field does take some getting used to. Figuring out how to control myself and take out enemies proved to be the most important part of the game. I was able to do most of it with my whip, but various items helped me overcome the challenges that I otherwise would have struggled to get past. There's the axe, which hits enemies that are above you, the dagger, which can be thrown, the cross, which can also be thrown but it comes back to you, making the dagger kind of look like a piece of shit, the watch, which stops time for a few brief seconds, and water. Holy water. It seems lame, but it's actually the best item in the game. Collecting hearts allows you to use items more, because that's a fucking normal game convention, and while it isn't necessary to use items, they can really help ease your troubles. The game is comprised of 6 levels, which features everything from a banquet hall to a torture chamber to a bunch of balconies to a swamp to some steampunky shit. Yeah, I didn't really think the last one fit in either. All in all, the game is pretty short. If you know what you're doing and you don't die, you could probably beat it in under 30 minutes. But if it's your first time and you suck at video games, then it will take a little longer. Yeah. Each level presents new challenges, and for the most part it scales in difficulty pretty well. What's cool is Simon doesn't really get lasting power-ups. Yeah, there are the whip upgrades, but there are only a few of them, and you lose them each time you die. The only way to get good enough to conquer the increase in difficulty is by powering up your own fucking mind. Enemies always appear in the same spots and typically move in a certain pattern. There are certainly exceptions, but you have the opportunity to kill just about every enemy you encounter before they can hit you. It's discovering these patterns where the fun comes in. At first, enemy interactions often turn out to be lethal, but after a while, you figure it out. Fleeman, easy. Bone towers, ha, give me a real challenge. Bats, no problem. God damn it. Once you practice enough, you can get to the boss with little to no troubles. In my opinion, the way bosses work is a little weird. If you primarily use your whip, each battle will be extremely difficult and harrowing. However, if you have the right item, then a lot of the bosses are pretty easy. For example, if you have the cross, you can take out the mummies in one hit. And if you have the holy water, you can make it so death doesn't even get the chance to move. I didn't really experiment much with holy water on other bosses, but I'm sure a bunch would have also been susceptible to it. I felt like like bosses should be the hardest part of each level, but if you explore enough and get the right item, a lot of them end up being pushovers. It's good that the game rewards you for exploring, but being able to take them out so easily is a little ridiculous. And yeah, I know I could have just not used the items that make the bosses super easy, but maybe you could just stop being such a judgmental fucking bitch. Once you kill enough ghouls and other monsters, you reach Dracula's tower. Visually, this was my favorite part of the game. The moon looks good, and fucking just look at that moss. That is some good looking moss. Anyway, Dracula is tough. In a very original final boss fashion, he teleports around the room and shoots fireballs at you. What's worse is he doesn't have a set pattern to how he moves. He teleports depending on your movements. But I began to realize that I could manipulate him into teleporting to certain spots if I moved the right way. Once I figured that out, I discovered the perfect timing to jump and attack so I could avoid getting hit. Much like the rest of the game, it was a process. I died a lot trying to beat him, but each time I got a little closer. Luckily, once you reach his tower, if you get a game over, you start right before him instead of at the beginning of the level. Once I got good enough, I was able to beat his first form without taking any damage. But then, of course, he transforms in the way only a final boss could, to a form so terrifying, so strong, that, oh, holy water works. Well, this is easy. Castlevania has had a pretty big impact on gaming. I can't really talk for how it's impacted the rest of the series, but there's a lot of them, so fucking it probably has in some way. Castlevania was one of the first action platformers of its kind. Now that I've played it, it's pretty obvious that a lot of games have used its formula. For instance, I always wondered why Zelda 2 was the way it was, and now I realize it was probably an effort to make another game like Castlevania. Castlevania has fun, challenging gameplay. There's no real story in sight, or really even a motivation as to why Simon wants to kill all these monsters other than they're probably evil, but I didn't really care. I just enjoyed the ride. Castlevania has aged very well and is a classic that everyone kind of owes it to themselves to check out. It's not perfect, but what is? I'm just glad that I'm no longer the loser that has never played Castlevania. Now I'm just another loser who has played Castlevania. Which, when I say that out loud, it kind of seems worse, but thanks for watching. If you liked the video, then press the like button and subscribe, because I'm making more videos like this and you wouldn't want to miss it. If you have missed my videos, you click one of these videos. You should watch them. They're videos. They're videos. Thanks!